Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We begin in the name of Allah, all praise and glory be to Allah, and may His finest peace and blessings be upon His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and his family and his companions, and all those who tread his path. We welcome everyone back to another episode of the Best of Stories. We continue with the next scene in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, when they approach their father to try to launch their plot against their brother Yusuf alayhi salam. In the very first verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is the 11th verse of the surah, قالوا يا أبانا, they said, O our dear father, ما لك لا تأمنا على يوسف, why is it that you do not trust us with Yusuf? وإنا له لناصحون, and we are certainly sincere counselors or sincere towards him. And so, just the way they start is suspicious. And because challenging an allegation, this is an important lesson for everyone that doesn't know this, you should know this, that challenging an allegation before that allegation is made many times serves to legitimize or substantiate the allegation. So were a child, for example, to swear or just yell out of nowhere, that no, I didn't eat the chocolate in the cupboard, before anyone ever asked him where did the chocolate go, or anyone ever accused him of stealing the chocolate in the cupboard, this would draw great suspicion around that child. If we were in a masjid and someone asks a large crowd of people who stole my shoes, and one person out of nowhere gets up and says, I didn't steal them. It's like, whoa, who said you stole them? So when someone denies an allegation before the allegation is squarely pointed at them, this obviously is very telling sometimes. Not all the time, because sometimes you may think that a person is accusing you and just trying to be cordial about it, so they're like blanket accusing or blanket asking. But lots of times people, because of their guilt, they are hasty in denying the allegation before anyone is even suspecting them, and as a result they draw suspicion on themselves, like the brothers of Yusuf here. And so it betrays them. It betrays their cover-up, betrays their cover story. Children do this all the time, and parents know this, and they know this more than their kids realize that they know this. Parents know in the look in their kids' eyes, they know in the words their kid chooses to say and when they say them, that they're not being honest. And then kids don't find out their parents are overlooking this, or they're on to them until those kids become parents or teenagers or whatnot. But adults as well, a prudent adult should make use of this alarm or this caution sign of a person denying an allegation. You want to be treacherous, so you start talking about honesty, right? You want to be, deviant, and so you start talking about, guidance. So that is certainly a lesson. Then they said, why don't you trust us with Yusuf? وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ, and we are people that extend nasiha to him. Nasihun means we exhibit nasiha. Nasiha, many people think, is advice. Nasiha is not advice. Sometimes we use it as advice, and it's fine to use it as advice, but nasiha is really about goodwill. When the Prophet ﷺ says ad-deenun nasiha, this deen is about nasiha, it's about having like a clear heart and having goodwill towards others. That's what it's about. Honey that's been cleared of all extraneous elements like twigs and the wax and everything. They say nasahtul asal. The asal, the honey, has undergone nasiha. When you finish doing patchwork on clothes, like you sew up the ripped areas, you say nasahtu thawb. Even the sewing needle itself is called a minsaha in Arabic, because it's what fixes things, right? And so nasiha is really not, it's about you wanting to fix someone, right? It's you wanting well for someone. And so it's really about the place where advice comes from. That's the connection between nasiha, goodwill, and advice. And the reason I say that is because if you feel, this is proven also here by this verse, right? He's saying, we have goodwill towards our brother. Why are you questioning our goodwill towards our brother? How can you doubt us? That's obviously them exposing themselves. In any case, so when you extend that to advice, we can take a lesson from here that the word nasiha is not really about advice. It's about where advice comes from. And if the advice comes from the right place, it'll come out the right way. If the advice comes from the right place, it'll come out the right way. If you're just trying to shame someone, it'll show in the way you're speaking to them. And if you actually are trying to get past someone's defenses to try to actually get them to benefit from the advice, it'll come out a certain way. You'll treat them the way you would like to be treated. You'd approach them the way you want to be approached. And so remember that nasiha is about a state that you're in towards another person. That's why they said, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ. And subhanAllah, you know, the saying to someone, we are sincere towards you, is a red flag. Especially when it's out of the blue, like we said. It's exactly what Shaitan said to our father Adam alayhi salam and his wife Hawa alayhi salam. He said to him, listen to me, eat from this tree. It's an awesome tree. وَإِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. And I am a sincere nasih. You know, I'm really sincere towards the both of you. That's an important understanding of the reality of nasiha, is to have goodwill towards people, and we take it, or of what we cite as evidence for that, is this verse, that they're saying, why don't you trust us when we have nasiha for Yusuf? Obviously, he's not talking about advice, right? Instructional advice. Speaking about how they feel towards him. Then the next verse goes on to say that they said, أَرْسِلْهُ مَعَنَا غَدًا. Send him with us tomorrow. Why? نَرْتَعْ وَنَلْعَبْ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. To narta' means to eat, meaning a picnic, right? They're gonna go eat out in an open space somewhere, recreate. وَنَلْعَبْ and play. وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. And we will certainly be competent guardians for him. We'll be his guardians. And so this is something that you must realize came off to Yaqub alayhi salam as another red flag. Like, they're not just asking him, why do you not trust us with Yusuf in general? Now they're taking it a step further and saying, now trust us. Like, we are challenging you. Prove to us that you trust us. And so they're guilting him here. And they're saying, we're going to take him out, and we're going to be so nice, we're going to play, and Yaqub alayhi salam knows they don't like him. They don't, enjoy playing with him. This is, when you find sudden niceness from someone who's so nasty to you, it is permissible to be cautious. It is permissible to be, a bit weary about that. That's not wrong, because having bad assumptions of people is haram, is unlawful in Islam when it's baseless, right? When you entertain thoughts that shaitan casts into your mind without enough substantiation. But Yaqub alayhi salam knows so much, and so he would be wrong to not be suspicious, like to not follow his gut on this. And also, some scholars said, notice that they piled on the list. You don't trust us, we're gonna be eating, and we're gonna be playing. They said, like, they could have just said, can Yusuf come on a picnic with us? The fact that they came off so forcefully was also telling of their weak position. Even just the word playing, like, you could have just said, we're going on a picnic to eat. Forget the whole trust issue. Picnic. But why do you have to list out the things you're going to do during your day? Some scholars said maybe it is because they felt what Yaqub felt, that this is not good enough for me to actually believe you want to go feed him somewhere, and that is something that we should be aware of, even in the intellectual realm, when we're providing justifications for Islam. Even don't pile on all your evidences at once, because when you pile on all evidences, some evidences are stronger than others, and so you reaching for so many evidences could actually weaken your argument. All they could remember is your weak evidence. They'll forget the strong evidence, and so piling on evidence is a sign of weakness sometimes. Like you look desperate. You look like you have something to prove. They actually had something to prove, and they knew that they would look suspicious, and so they were saying this. Let him come. He can eat. It's as if they're saying, not eat, okay, how about play? He can play as well. Like, they're just looking for something. And of the lessons in this verse, actually, that the scholars mentioned, this verse is of the proofs that it's not haram to play. I mean, sometimes people may say this is a given, but it's not necessarily a given, because being Muslim means submitting your life to God. That means every moment of your 24 hours belongs to God. And so a Muslim technically needs to look for permission from God to do what they want with their life, right? Like exceptions to the rule, right? Am I allowed to do a little bit for me? And of the beauty of our deen is that Allah encourages you to do quite a bit for yourself so that you can continue finding the stamina to fulfill your primary role, which is the worship of Him, right? Serving Him and serving Him through serving His creation, all of it, right? The wide meaning of worship. But the idea is that racing and playing and recreating and rejuvenating yourself, this is something that is necessary. Islam recognizes our humanness and makes us the best human beings by not being idealistic and asking of us what should be asked of angels, not humans, right? And so if someone says, Allah said, I only created the human and the jinn to worship me, to serve me, we're going to say yes. And even the prophets allowed their children to play. And even the Prophet ﷺ, at times, returning from serving Allah on the battlefield, raced with his wife Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha. And this is extremely important. You know, Ali ibn Abi Talib and others, but the most famous narration is from Ali, radiallahu anhu. He said that, you know, I give myself a chance to, like, you know, R&R, right? Rest and relaxation, because these hearts, if they're like overwhelmed, they become blind. Like they just, they rebel. You have to, you know, balance the fact that you were not created for play. Absolutely. That should never like compromise the primary objective, but you are allowed to play so that you can better serve, of course, halal play, the reason for which you were created. Halal play, and not at the sake of everything else. I mean, if you think about, just to point this out, because we're talking about the ruling on playing games or racing or sports or whatnot, the difference between you playing games, I'm not saying one is halal and one is haram, but you need to recognize there is a huge difference and a far greater likelihood for haram in you being a spectator of sports as opposed to being a participant, you know, a competitor in sports. I mean, playing soccer, for example, is an awesome thing. You know, the health of their body, the de-stressing, all of these things, right? The camaraderie, the brotherhood, all that combined is awesome. But what happens, think of like the extreme, radical, fanatic loyalties to sports teams. Like even in the Muslim world, like you think of the soccer teams and how they waste people's time, waste people's wealth, right? They rip apart the seams of unity based on, you know, this sports club versus that sports club. It rips apart the seams of unity in this ummah. So playing, necessary. But that is very different from spectating. And spectating, even when it's going to be halal, we need to be vigilant of the great haram it could lead to, or the wasted opportunities at the very least it usually leads to. So Yaqub alayhi salam responds. What does he say in response? قال إني لا يحزنني أن تذهبوا به وأخاف أن يأكله الذئب وأنتم عنه غافلون. He says, it saddens me that you should take him. He's very protective of Yusuf alayhi salam, and he knows that they're jealous of this, but he just the fear of them winning this argument perhaps caused him to say it again. I don't want you to take him. And then he said, it saddens me that I be separated from him, even like for a few hours. Then he says something even more interesting, and I fear that the wolf eats him. Like, how unlikely is that a wolf was going to eat someone at a picnic? But that's how protective and loving he was, that his mind drifts to those places out of just sheer compassion and love and affection for Yusuf alayhi salam. And you know, a lesson here that Ibn Ashur rahimahullah points out about being good to your parents, which is just really nice. he says, him saying it saddens me, if you're a good child, it's supposed to be enough. Because being dutiful to your parents does not just mean obeying their orders. It means avoiding their sadness even if they didn't order you to do X, Y, and Z. There's a big difference, right? When he says it saddens me, that should be the end of the story. The same way if your parents order you to go clean your room, just, I don't know, the typical, right, parenting example, go clean your room. It is enough that you go clean your room. But you know that you need to go clean your room, but also not give your parents that look that hurts their heart as you're walking off to clean your room. And that's part of it, right? Or another scenario, even if your parent tells you, no, you go ahead and do X, Y, and Z, right? He's telling you because for you, but they know that they don't, like this very much. The sensitive child, the dutiful child that's prioritizing the feelings of the parents will not do it unless they have to. That which their parents permitted. They will not do it unless they have to. Sometimes you have to. But they will not. And so that's just a good point about the fact that he said, it saddens me. That should have been enough. And then he said, I fear that the wolf will eat him. That unlikely event of a wolf eating one of 10 or one of 11 people or one of 12 people in a picnic was so unrealistic that the brothers saw that it's perfect thing to act on. He's haunted by this, imaginative fear, or this unlikely. It's not imaginative, right? It's unlikely, and so they said it's perfect opportunity. We're going to use that as our story once we do what we're going to do. So there's a great lesson here. The lesson is try not to volunteer information to people that they can later weaponize against you. That's very common. Sometimes newlyweds, they make a very big mistake, and that, like, when they're all in that lovey-dovey phase in the beginning, when they're being very utopian and unrealistic, what do? In the spirit of transparency, in the spirit of honesty, these naive newlyweds, they share the most shameful moments of their past, which is haram, by the way. Allah loves to conceal, and so when He conceals you, you're not supposed to expose yourself. Even if someone were to ask you, you're not supposed to say it, by the way. That's just a rule of thumb. There may be exceptions, but that is the rule of thumb. You're not allowed to, not even just can you lie, you're not allowed to expose yourself after Allah has concealed you. So you'd be obligated to lie because Allah wants you to protect your dignity. And because people don't forget the way Allah Azza wa Jal forgives and forgets, not in absent-minded sense, but forgets as in buries, tucks away your past. And so newlyweds sometimes, in the spirit of, just trust and, and all that stuff, they open up to every aspect of their past, no matter how shameful, to their partner. And then they regret it. Soon enough, they realize that people are not like Allah. People don't just, forget things. And many people will condemn you for your past in a moment's notice if they feel like the opportunity calls for it or the need calls for it. And so they'll bring up your past again. And so don't give people the sword by which they will attack you. That's extremely important. And so, but Yaqub alayhi salam did, and he said this in a moment of emotive expression, and he wished he could have retracted those statements, because even the prophets have statements in their lives they wish they could retract. And that is what is so amazing about the Quran, that every single word of the Quran never needed to be retracted. It was said spontaneously, engaging their questions of the audience, Muslim and non-Muslim, said to friend and foe, addressing newly emerging events. And it never needed to be retracted for quality control. Even the prophets, right, were human. But the Quran is so special. Even the verses, by the way, of nasakh, the verses that are abrogated, like the verse is still there, but the ruling no longer applies, even those are deliberate. They're not like, oh, that verse could go. No, there's still a use for it being there, though it is not to be acted upon. There's great wisdoms to nasakh, to abrogation. Of them, for example, is for Allah to showcase, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the willingness of the believer to submit. Like Allah legislating on Ibrahim alayhi salam to slaughter his son, and then repealing that rule, canceling that rule once the willingness was shown, that is a great wisdom, right? Or at times Allah putting an initial duty on us and then repealing it to reward us for our willingness, or to show us His clemency, that He reduced the load but kept the reward at the original initial mark. These are all of the benefits. So even the verses that would be repealed in application are still deliberate. The Quran, not a letter of it needs to be retracted. But the prophets, even the prophets, wanted to retract some of their words. Finally, about this verse, Yaqub alayhi salam was very wise in saying at the end of this, like, I don't want to separate from Yusuf, and I'm afraid, and the wolf might eat him, while you are unaware. Right? While you are unaware. He did not deepen the resentment of his kids towards Yusuf by saying that you would ever do this deliberately. He kind of covered it up by saying, if this were to happen, it would happen, by a totally innocent mistake from you guys. And that's wise parenting, and that's wise mentoring in general, because people have their inborn nature, for sure. It is it's nature and nurture. People have their inborn nature, but the way they see the world seeing them will nurture the way they become, right? And so if he says you guys can't be trusted, then they're going to grow up, or they're going to fit the mold. They're going to say, okay, in that case, if we can't be trusted, that's right, we can't be trusted. We are treacherous folk. And, you see this sometimes in certain sectors of society as well, that people become the way society looks at them. If you say I'm a nobody, I'll start feeling like I'm a nobody, and I'll start acting like I'm a nobody. If someone were to say, this person's a thief, and no matter how hard he tries, he can't shake off that perception of people that I'm a thief, then you know what? If I'm a thief either way, you might as well start stealing, because either way I'm getting the bad rap for it, even though I'm paying for the consequences for something I'm not doing, so I might as well do it. So him covering up that he perceives them as not trustworthy, treacherous. They were treacherous, but he did not want to feed that further by saying, you cannot be trusted. And so in the end, they said, listen, if the wolf eats him, we must be really losers. Like, who gets eaten at a picnic? And who gets eaten at a picnic surrounded by وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ, when we're a strong group, strong bunch of 10 men. And so he was stuck, alayhi salam, cornered by them, guilted by them, because he didn't have a response. And sometimes you not having a response is, what's the word? It's always intended by Allah Azza wa Jal, but to bring about something had to happen. Yaqub alayhi salam had to lose Yusuf for the story to continue, for the other wisdoms to actualize. And so his inability to protect his son here, it's just, do you trust us or not? So he had to, at the end of the day, let them go with Yusuf, or say, I don't trust you with Yusuf, and further rile them up against Yusuf. It was a lose-lose, right? But it had to happen, and so he buckled to the pressure and hoped for the best. And Yusuf alayhi salam went off with them under the promise that they would be protected. Like, if we're 10 men, we would be losers to let our youngest brother get eaten by a wolf. And maybe that's a final lesson that's equally important, that people are not the principles they announce. We all know this, but we constantly need to be reminded about this. They say we would be losers if we did away with our brother or let our brother get hurt. But just because they're saying we recognize we would be losers doesn't mean they're actually willing to live up to that. They are willing not just to let him be eaten by a wolf. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. They are about to betray their brother. And so many times people say a word of truth, which is a principle, declare it, but they intend by it, or they intend to use it for evil means. Just like, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu an, when the Khawarij, the rebels, arose in his time, they would stand up after prayer and cause commotion in the masjid, and keep saying, "Inil hukmu illa lillah, inil hukmu illa lillah." That rulership is only for Allah. Rulership is only for Allah. Meaning you are wrong. You've associated partners with God by, basically admitting man-made laws, and of course a baseless accusation. But that was the accusation, and they're saying this is only for God to to make laws, not you. And so Ali ibn Abi Talib, his response to them was always kalimatu haqqin urida biha batil. That is a word of truth by which evil or falsehood was sought. Is sought. Like you're saying a true word, but you're using it for false means or false ends. And so that same thing here. Just because someone is announcing a certain principle, that principle may be true. It doesn't mean that you're using it in a way that I have to concede to. But the command of Allah has to come to pass, and we have to move on now to the next scene of the story. Jazakallah khairan. Don't forget your Friday night dua, and especially the locals that are with us from Allentown. Please remember the Jumu'ah donations to help the masjid running full steam. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.